Welcome back. So, because I just recently had my car detailed, I hauled out all of the gear that I had in it, and one of the things that I keep in the vehicle, or have been keeping in the vehicle for years, is a piece of e-mobility gear that I recently used. It came in handy with getting my car detailed. The detail shop is about 8 miles away from here, and so that allowed me a way to not have to rent an Uber or take a bus or something of that nature. But let's talk a little bit about that for a second. So back in the early days of the Tesla superchargers, they were few and far between, and where they were located tended to be in areas where you would have to probably walk a ways to try and find a bathroom or find some place to eat. Obviously, as the chargers became more ubiquitous, everybody wanted them. They wanted them next to their restaurant. They wanted them next to, you know, their mall or what have you. And so it was easier then to you know, find amenities that were around those chargers. So it's not as important now as it was back then, but still a fun thing to talk about. So I started looking at things that would fit in the car, and they, you know, had things like the one wheel and some other small personal transport devices that I was not familiar with. I would have to relearn. I would have to learn how to use one of the one wheels or whatnot. But I skateboarded in my youth. I did a lot of longboarding, and so that was something that I was already familiar with. And so I started to look at electric skateboards for e-mobility. Again, not so much as a sport. I'm old and fat, and so I don't heal like I did when I was in my 20s, and so obviously this is not going to be a solution for everybody, but it looked like something that I could pull off, and so started to look at what was available in skateboards. Well, I was absolutely shocked. Now, electric skateboards, when they first came out, were designed to supply what was called that last mile solution. In other words, you know, you got to get to your bus, or you got to, you know, get from your bus to work, or that kind of a thing. You could charge at work. And so the skateboards tended to have ranges of 7 miles, 8 miles, 10 miles. When the Boosted Board Plus came out at 14 miles, that was something, ooh, that was, you know, that was really out there. Well, by the time I started looking into the state of what was available at the time, these boards are capable of 30 miles, 29, 30 miles. I did a range test. I couldn't believe it that would be possible. Now again, we're talking about for e-mobility now. If you're talking about sport riding, or if you have the big AT tires, that's going to wind up chewing up a little bit of your distance, but not much. You know, you still wind up with ranges of well over 20 miles, which is just astounding to me. At any rate, so while I was looking for something to put in the car, I like to work in extremes, and so I wound up getting one of the longest range boards that I could find that would fit in the trunk all right. And so I wound up going with the Evolve Carbon GT with, again, a range with, when you put these large solid compound wheels on them that are actually designed for electric skateboarding, this now has a range of over 30 miles, just a little over 30 miles, which is insane to think of being on a board for that amount of time. But point being is, if you're going to have something in your car that is going to be maybe a replacement for a spare tire, if you wind up, you know, stuck in a place maybe that you don't want to be, or maybe that you're close enough to home that you can just ride it out. The tow truck can go one way, you can go the other. Whatever rationale you might have for using it these days. In my case, I had the car detailed. The detail shop was about 8 miles away, and so I was able to then ride back home while they did the car, and then ride back to pick up the car. Now, when I put it in the vehicle, I thought, oh, okay, so now what'll really be neat is to be able to actually charge the board in the vehicle. How do I go about doing that? And so they have these inverters that are available, at least until the Cybertruck comes out, and then we can just put this in the front and plug the chargers directly into the truck. So that's kind of cool. And I just keep this in between the driver and passenger seats, tucked there next to the rug, and I have this run over so that it can reach the 12-volt plug when I need to. And this has a long enough cord that the charger can be left plugged in to the inverter, and then this is run underneath the mat between the split in the 60/40 seats, and then run directly into the passenger compartment so that I can charge the board. And that's been kind of the way that I've had it set up for years now. And occasionally I'll use it now to tootle around a mall or what have you. It's a great way to get around, but to be honest, I don't use it all that much anymore. But I just thought it was fun to go ahead and talk a little bit about that and maybe see what ideas you guys have. Do you carry an electric bicycle with you? What do you do on longer trips where maybe something like this would be a really neat option to have? Because obviously if you're staying at a hotel or this or that, you may wind up being in a situation where you guys might want, a family might want to be mobile. And it's really easy to put several of these in the trunk and not actually have them take up a lot of space if you were to just kind of stack them along. Obviously I just leave mine flat and then I can put other things on top of it, and so one board certainly doesn't require a whole lot of space. But I just thought that would be interesting for you guys to see, and maybe talk to us a little bit about in the comments about what your e-mobility solutions are, and maybe I'll examine some of those as well. One of the things that I've been looking to do with the channel as we kind of move forward, because again, we're talking about energy sovereignty. We're talking about how can we relieve ourselves from the burden of fossil fuels and other monthly charges or annual charges that just drive us crazy and drive the quality of life down. If we don't have to register another car, if we don't have to pay insurance on another car, would an electric bicycle, would something like that suffice? So I plan on doing some examinations of various other e-mobility solutions that might help us on a day-to-day basis. Obviously, an electric skateboard, that's not necessarily something that's going to be usable by a broad portion of folks. They're just simply the skill set required to do that, and also the risk that you take on when you're doing that. It's just far and above what we'll probably be asking of folks for an e-mobility solution. So let's talk about that in some future videos. And again, all of my videos here on this channel are comment driven, and so please comment, like, and subscribe, since that's the way that the YouTube algorithms are working now, apparently. So let's see what your solutions are, and maybe that'll give me something to examine as we move forward.